Hello, everybody. It's me, Schluge, and I am back with another reaction. Oh, and yes, you get to see me in my new form. Yes, it's me in full VTuber glory. Well, the first version of my VTuber. As you can see, this one does not have my hands or my cap or anything of usual note. But that's okay, because, well, like I said, this is only the first version. This is V1. And to kick it off, I thought we'd talk about something that, believe it or not, a lot of people have wanted me to react to for a while from Animarchy history, and that is the new Kursk video that, in fact, did show up. Let me just make sure it's at 0 so I can get everything. So, yeah, we are here with Animarchy's Kursk video. So, for all those who do not know, recently, a couple weeks ago, actually, from the recording of this video, Ukraine invaded Russia. Yeah. The Ukrainian armed forces committed to a massive offensive, in which case most of their armed forces, well, a good majority of them, charged and broke through the Russian lines into the Kursk region of Russia. And the memes haven't frickin' stopped. For obvious reason. If anyone else is a history nerd like I am, you'll remember that Kursk is, of course, the region where the biggest tank battle in World War II history ever took place. In which case, the Russians won. So, yeah, this is interesting. And the fact that the Russians have been losing more and more land over this than they ever did in World War II has led to quite a lot of memes happening, especially when NATO decided to call in a couple of experts to basically talk about what Ukraine was doing, and the fact that they happened to be from the German army was not lost on anybody. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. So, but before we watch this video, make sure you like and subscribe, turn on notifications, follow me on all my social media down below in the description, and if you want to keep supporting this channel and keep giving me and my puppy dog, Koa, who I'll eventually have added in here somewhere, maybe I'll have him as a PNG somewhere, like snoozing in the bottom of the screen, make sure to join my YouTube membership program, which is down below. Now, enough of me talking. Let's talk about let's see what actually happened. Also, before I say anything, let's just also say this. I am an amateur historian. I am not a professional by any means. I have no degrees, and I don't have the resources that Animarchy, Laserpig, and others say. So take what I say with just me, still figuring things out. In fact, that's kind of what we're all doing. So, let's get into this, shall we? Let's start this video off in 3, 2, 1, and play.
You know, if you had told me I would be able to use the term the Kursk salient, and for it not to be in a video about World War II, I wouldn't have believed you. I seriously would not have believed you.
Yeah.
But alas, here we are.
Yep.
Just when you think Ukraine couldn't possibly pull something crazier than their zero-altitude air assaults, their drone strikes on Moscow, shooting down Russian AWACS, or winning a war at sea without actually having a navy, they do something like this.
Yep.
I've intentionally been staying away from Ukraine recently, wanting to get back to my more historically themed content.
Fair.
And because I've been waiting for the F-16 to enter service fully and
Hell yeah.
impact. That would allow me to follow up on my Air War series, which would then neatly dovetail into Soviet Aviation Part 2. But given the circumstances and its historical significance, both past and present, the Ukrainians have once again changed my schedule. The title states the obvious, and if you've been following the war even slightly, you know what's going on. Nevertheless, someone has to collate it all. Thus, the primary sources for this video are the myriad of English-language OSINT accounts across Twitter and Telegram, while the confirmed peer-reviewed data comes from the Institute for the Study of War and the Royal United Services Institute.
Okay.
Welcome to the Battle of Kursk 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Of course!
Today we're going to go over the events that have occurred as of time of writing, the operational realities they present for both the Russians and Ukraine, the tactics and response of both sides, and their implications for both sides operationally and strategically. But before we go any further, I have to do two things. First, I have to let you know that to remain compliant with YouTube, community, and advertiser guidelines, most of the footage you see in this video will be background stock footage, not of current events. Okay? So it will be mainly training exercises from Russia and Ukraine, respectively. The reason for this is combat footage is not allowed to be shown unless it is directly pertinent and only if it is censored. Where I am able to show footage from the current situation, I will. When I am able to show stock footage from Ukraine itself, I will. But other than that, most of it will be background footage to remain compliant with YouTube community guidelines.
That's fair.
The other thing I need to talk to you about is operational security. Operational security is a big feature of the Kursk offensive operation, and you know what? Your own operational security is also important. That's right.
Here comes
this is an advert segue. Roll the clip. This video has kindly been sponsored by the world's fastest and most popular VPN service, NordVPN. We all need a VPN these days to keep us safe online. It's practically a requirement. And in the age of AI scam bots as well as big data harvesters, it's more vital than ever before. Thankfully, Nord, with its sleek, easy-to-use design, gives you the edge with absolutely no hassle. But they have so many quality-of-life features. Hell, Nord has an entire web page dedicated to what these threats are and how to handle them. Everything from guarding your critical data inside applications to the impacts of cyber warfare. Trust me, as a military YouTuber, that made me pleasantly surprised. And check out this interface. I can just click through all of these features. And of course, all the other features are there. Nord's Active Protection shields you from malware trackers and ads. Their inbuilt dark web monitor notifies you if someone steals your credentials. MeshNet allows you to connect up to 6 devices remotely and securely, and it comes with a dedicated IP that helps you avoid capacities and block lists. Basically, if you can think of what a VPN needs to do, it does it. And of course, they have 24/7 customer support, a dedicated app for every device, and right now you can get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan by clicking the link in the description below. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have literally nothing to lose by giving them a try. So give them a shot. Click the link in the description and get that special offer. Plus, you'll help the channel, and I'll appreciate all the help I can get. Now, back to the video.
Alright, let's see this thing. Operation Zeta, do what?
On August the 6th, 2024, Russian military bloggers started sharing reports on Telegram that a minor incursion by Ukrainian forces into Kursk Oblast was underway. There had been ongoing drone strikes in the region for several weeks, and there had been rumblings of small sabotage groups crossing into Russia, as well as increased electronic warfare activity being recorded on their sensor network on the border.
Right.
However, it didn't appear all that serious until it became clear that an incursion was underway.
Yep.
Then people started to take notice. The initial estimates numbered at around 300 men, supported by a small contingent of armored vehicles. But right from the beginning, something was wrong. As word started to spread, one of the few pieces of footage from the Ukrainian side began to surface. A modernized T-64, complete with reactive armor, advanced optics, and the now ubiquitous cope cage, thundered past. This wasn't an MRAP or a BTR. It was one of Ukraine's small but potent force of modern main battle tanks. However, despite the implications of this development, the real alarming part was what followed behind it. A NATO mine-clearing vehicle based on the Leopard 1, and a full contingent of combat engineers rolling alongside it atop an entire column of BTRs. Previously throughout the conflict, incursions into Russian territory have been carried out exclusively by either Special Operations Forces, or for the larger cross-border raids, light infantry units comprised of Russian, Belarusian, and Georgian volunteers. The reason for that were twofold. First, geopolitical concerns from the Western allies around potential escalation of the conflict, which could lead to economic or even military retaliation by Russia, resulting in restrictions on Ukrainian rules of engagement, both in where they could attack and when they could use Western equipment. This in turn contributes to point 2. After the failed counteroffensive of 2023, the restrictions in launching deep strikes against key Russian defense infrastructure and the ever-increasing strain on Ukrainian manpower by trying to man a continent-length
trust me, Stefan, you could probably still tell what I am just by listening to my voice.
The risk of carrying out offensive operations into Russian territory would be far too great.
Plus, this is going to get more expressive over time. This is just the first model.
Therefore, the most effective methodology is fast-moving cavalry raids with units comprised of expendable personnel. Maximum punch, optimal survivability with minimum risk. Russian volunteers are of exceedingly high propaganda value in the ongoing information war against Putin's regime. And violating Russian territory as a form of liberation war is both politically acceptable while being a massive PR coup. Not to mention the troops have a fanaticism that gives them a tactical edge morale-wise. But if the raid fails and they end up being crushed, all Ukraine has lost are a few light vehicles, the occasional stolen T-72, and a bunch of soldiers who, quite frankly, they don't care very much about losing. A Russian Foreign Legion didn't factor into their mobilization plans. They aren't Ukrainians, and they don't carry the political baggage of losing Western volunteers. However, these raiding forces had one other crucial impact. An impact which I now believe, given what we've seen,
Marcus.
is very intentional. Every time Russian borders were violated, they were always small-scale violations. Politically damaging, yes, but militarily they were practically inconsequential. Though the intercontinental ballistic Cessna was, in my opinion, an absolutely devastating indictment of Russian air defense capability. That, and it was incredibly funny. Although it's probably expected given their track record in dealing with intercepting Cessnas. Maybe Prigo should have chosen his means of transport way more carefully.
Man, the true bane of the Russian military and air force. The fucking Cessna 172. Oh, brother. This is nothing but funny. This is just ridiculous. Ugh. Yeah, honestly, the more and more I've been watching this war, it's honestly just pathetic at this point. Oh, brother.
Nevertheless, the soft factors and political implications notwithstanding, the raw military utility of these attacks is limited, as the vital targets they need to hit are well out of their operational reach. And this issue was compounded by Russian conscription laws, providing a handy-dandy loophole, stating that while draftees can't go to Ukraine, they can be stationed in Russia. The Border Guard Service and the Rosgvardia were able to contain these attacks and even repel them once they got some heavier-duty equipment from nearby reserve units. However, you can probably see the drawbacks of relying on teenagers with little training and no combat experience for border security.
Yeah.
Reaction time, failures in containment
That's right,
breakthroughs,
Stefan.
and casualty rates, all of them are much, much higher. And after sitting on the frontiers doing nothing except holding the line to wait for backup after yet another cross-border raid that will only last a couple of days at most,
the biggest Russian piece
that
of
breeds
shit.
an air of complacency.
Next to Putin
Therein
himself.
lies the question, though. What would happen if that normal, light-probing jab they were so used to was actually a full-strength uppercut? Well, now, it appears we have our answer. Sources vary across Russian and Ukrainian sources, but up to now we know that at least 4 brigades worth of personnel, around 5 to 10,000 men, made up of elements of no less than 6 different Ukrainian formations.
No. Holy crap, I didn't know they sent M113s into fucking Ukraine. Holy shit. Oh my god, nobody tell Mike Sparks. Nobody tell Mike Sparks. Oh, fuck. Like, if he finds out about this shit again, he'll bring up the fucking Arrow fucking bullshit that we reacted to a long time ago. Fuck that. Oh, but yeah. Hey, even more proof the M113 still has a long life ahead of it. Still, it's also good to see it. It's good to see a great vehicle like that, and the fact it's still kicking butt. And now it's actually kicking Russian butt. Like it was designed to do. A lot of old Cold War stuff is getting they're getting their comeback.
Took part in the opening phase. In the vanguard were the 80th and 82nd Separate Air Assault Brigades, backed up by the 22nd and the 88th Mechanized Brigades, all of them from Operational Command Group West. In the second echelon providing flank security were the 61st Mechanized from Operational Command Group North, reinforced by the 10th Army Corps' 116th Mechanized Brigade. And augmenting all of this raw combat power is a full contingent of support assets, electronic warfare units, self-propelled artillery, multiple launch rocket systems with HIMARS, but most crucially of all, a fully functioning frontal air defense unit, complete with Tunguskas, books, and given the inability of Russian air assets to operate in the region above treetop height, most likely one of the Patriot batteries.
Oh,
however,
hell yes.
Given the range on that system, it is most definitely secure behind the border.
Yeah.
Even so, it's serving its purpose. The initial border assault was rapid and unrelenting. From geolocated footage and interviews given by Ukrainian personnel, they achieved complete tactical surprise. The first contact with Russian border guards was totally one-sided. The firefights were short but violently executed. Armor smashed the fortifications as the infantry, still mounted aboard their vehicles, thundered past, leaving follow-on forces to mop things up. The shock on contact completely paralyzed the inexperienced defenders, who surrendered practically without a fight. Footage shows platoon-sized formations under guard by as few as 5 armed Ukrainian operators. Some of the POWs captured on camera up close, like this group here, have expressions which can only be described as shock or disbelief. With the perimeter defenses breached and the Russian border lacking the defense in depth found on the front lines, exploitation forces rushed to strategic locations in the region. An element has been geolocated moving towards the Kursk power plant east of Lvov, while other units meanwhile started maneuvering to encircle Sudza, the main settlement in the region and the headquarters for the local garrison. The Gazprom gas metering station on the border was one of the first key objectives secured, as it regulates a considerable percentage of Russian natural gas flow to the European Union, giving Ukraine some very useful geopolitical leverage.
Hell yeah.
But most importantly, the lead Ukrainian elements raced ahead to secure the main supply routes in and out of the local area, seizing as many settlements as possible along the way. By the end of the first 2 days, over 100 POWs had been taken. Ukrainian forces had advanced at a minimum of 10 miles deep into Russian territory.
Wow.
Though some forward elements, mainly recon units and special forces, were reported by Russian mill bloggers at double that distance.
Whoa.
The reason for their rapid advance was twofold. First, to push the line of contact as far away from the border as possible to provide operational depth, and second, due to the constraints placed by NATO on long-range weapon systems being employed on Russian territory, the Ukrainian invasion force needed to secure forward positions to allow for their various advanced long-range support assets to come into play, so they could initiate Phase 2, isolating the battle space with interdiction fires.
Hell
Or,
yeah.
to translate that into English, they set a trap. As Russian
It's a
reserve
trap!
units, Chechen Akhmat battalions, and border security formations started reacting, it became apparent that there were no ready response forces to counter this sort of border incursion. Or rather, we should call it what it is: an invasion.
Yep.
Though, in fairness, the People's Republic of Kursk Oblast has suffered persecution of its Ukrainian minority since 2014. So it was inevitable that a Ukrainian special military operation would be required to stabilize the region and protect the interests of the local citizens. The units mobilized to respond were completely unequipped to handle the kind of
God damn it, Animarchy. Really? You're using the Russian language? Fucking. Yes. The Kursk people. Yes, the Kursk people need to be. They need to be protected. The Ukrainian interests must be protected through this special military operation. Yes, this is not an invasion. Oh my god. Oh boy. Wow, Russia. What a coinkydink. It looks so familiar, don't it? Wow. Oh boy. Oh, what a pain in the ass. What a pain in the ass for Putin.
position they were expected to face. Conscripts and reservists with only the most basic of gear.
Hey, Coop.
One Russian column, filmed during the initial phase, was comprised almost entirely of civilian 4x4s and the glorious yet completely useless UAZ Superslav battle buses. One of the only actual military trucks in the column was an older
This
Ural
is
towing a field
Ukrainian
gun from
Fortnite.
late World
Holy
War II.
fuck.
No, I am not joking. The reason the advanced Ukrainian recon teams had pushed so hard in the first few days was to project their organic ISR, or Information Surveillance Reconnaissance, assets as far into the Russian lines as possible, bypassing electronic warfare and air defense installations they hadn't taken out that were established on the border. So as all these convoys and reinforcements began to assemble, they were under observation from Ukrainian drones and sniper teams the entire time.
God damn it, Stefan. Hell no, I'm not getting drunk for this. In all honesty, Steph. Okay, so you know what? Pause the video real quick. Pause the video real quick. Hang on one sec. Hang on. Let me bring my butt a little bit here. So, okay, so let me explain the reason why I quickly. This is just so yeah. Sorry for kind of like stopping the video in my tracks here. Hi, Crystal. But this is basically a little explanation for some people who don't know exactly what's going on and why I am now a dog. Mainly the reason for this is that I felt the need that I needed to evolve my channel, change up a few things, plus there were some issues involving some friends of mine that had issues with doxing or other things like that, and so Yeah, I felt there was time for a change. I wanted also to expand my audience since I'm not really a brony anymore. I still react to a lot of brony content. Like I'm still gonna be reacting to Lightning Bliss and TF2 analysis and all the other stuff. But I'm definitely moved off a bit more. Plus, I wanted to have a more diverse, more welcoming face than the one I already have. So that's why I really kind of switched to becoming a VTuber. Plus, when it came to my name, my old name, Joe Scout K9, note, I've had that name for a long, long time. And, like, back when YouTube required you to have, like, one giant name with numbers at the end of it, that was part of the reason I had that name. And really, when it came to me calling myself Schluge, actually, this was made by my girlfriend Ven. Like, my whole persona was made by my girlfriend Ven. In fact, she made this model that I'm using it. And like I said, this is only version 1. This is just the model I wanted to get started, so that way I can get used to the new software I'm using, and get used to the whole, have you guys get used to the whole VTuber thing. In the future, there will be other models that are far more expressive, and will actually have my hands. Yes, pretty soon I will have hand tracking. Right now, but that's a long ways away. Depends on the cookie. Depends on the cookie. But yeah, in all honesty, I also wanted to try and do more other things. Like recently, I reacted to a Russian Badger video that came out a while ago, the Helldiver one. So I want to do more reactions, more than just like edgy military history or stuff like that. I plan to do some more SFM stuff, as well as also go back to reacting to pyromancers when they start making videos again, and many, many more. So yeah, there's just a lot of big changes that had to happen. I felt they needed to happen. I hope you guys will get used to this phase pretty soon because in the end I just want to have fun. Ooh. Ven is always open for commissions. She is always open, and she doesn't. But this is just the VTuber, but she also does other stuff. Yeah, Crystal, check my Twitter and my Discord. Yeah, literally go down to my Twitter and my Discord. Like there, you can always find her there. I leave links to all this stuff. As much as I probably would hate, as much as I know, like biologically, I hate it. I'm a furry, so you know what? Screw biology. I like chocolate chip cookies. So yeah, so don't worry. I know this will maybe look a little janky. I might be just glaring at you for a time, or just staring into the void. But that's just like I said. This is a V1 model. And pretty soon there will be more updated models, which will include my hat, new clothes, and a much more expressive face, and mobile and actual finger and hand tracking. So that's why I needed to become a VTuber. I wanted to expand, and I wanted to bring in a more diverse audience. I need to help grow my channel. I need to grow my channel, and I can't do that solely by sticking to just the occasional brony video and as much as I love Animarchy and Laserpig, I need to do other reactions and streams, which is why I encourage everyone to go to my Twitch channel. Because I'm going to be there a lot more. I'm going to be doing games with friends or alone, doing lots of other different things. Like currently, I'm actually going to be streaming Space Marines 2 on Twitch when it comes out. You're damn right I'm doing the campaign and multiplayer and co-op. I'm doing so much shit. So yeah, by all means, please, please come to Twitch. Please get used to this. I hope so. And in the end, there's going to be more stuff yeah, the Twitch is funnier anyway. Yeah, a lot of funny shit happens at Twitch. And don't worry, there's going to be more changes. Like, I think I'm going to add like a PNG of Coas here someday that Ven will also commission. I'll also commission Ven for. So that way he's always just chilling. Anyway, I've yapped enough about this. I'm pretty sure a lot of the history fans and the military fans want me to get on with it. So I will make like a Monty Python sketch and get on with it. So I shrink myself down. I'll go back down here. And magic wing for them. Bing bong! Just because I've moved on from the Brony fandom doesn't mean I still don't go back and visit. I just got back from Everfree and the vlogs are going to continue. Anyway, continuing on. Sorry about that, guys. Talk over. What the hell? Ugh. Leave it to Koa to always ruin this up. Well, since we're paused, Koa, you need to go outside? Be right back, folks. Enjoy my VTuber staring at you in the void. Actually, I could do this. Yay. Be right back. Oh, come on, you big goober. You big goober. Your business. I thought I let you out before all this started. Leave it to... Some things will not change. I.e. my dog. Ugh. While he does his sniffing, now that it's finally cooled down a little bit, it's actually bearable to be outside now. Okay, let's continue for the time we have while he's outside doing his business.
And do you hear that alarm? I do believe it is HIMARS o'clock.
Yep.
On every major road leading into Sudza, artillery and MLRS fire slammed into convoy after convoy. In one strike, whose footage I can't show due to YouTube community guidelines, over 100 Russian troops were killed and twice that wounded after practically the entire column was set ablaze, with a mixture of high explosive and cluster munitions.
Hell yeah.
In another strike, an entire column of T-80s got fried while still on their transporters. The armoured reinforcements the Russians desperately depended on to hold the line never even got to start their engines. According to testimonials from Russian POWs, so take that information with a grain of salt as you will, the garrison commanders in the region had received orders to carry out what amounted to human wave assaults with all their motorized units available, full of conscripts, and they were to do it as a delaying action so experienced formations with better weapon systems had the time to get redeployed from other sectors of the front, primarily the Kharkiv axis, given it's nearby. But given the preparedness and aggression the Ukrainian forces have shown, it is very likely
there
that...
he is. God, that was quick. Be right back. Alright, and put myself back here.
Every major road into the region had been pre-ranged with fire plans already drawn up around target reference points, making any transit into the forward battle area a costly exercise. The ability of Ukrainian forces to place accurate fires so rapidly in response to threats has been absolutely devastating, if not decisive, providing the attacking force with freedom of maneuver while buying time for the development of interior lines. Yet none of this would be possible without the shaping operations carried out prior to and during the offensive. Shaping operations carried out by the Ukrainian Air Force and the Ukrainian Drone Operator Corps.
Nice.
For the past several months, the primary objective of air operations and drone strikes has been the degradation of the Russian integrated air defense system and their various airborne assets, be they fixed-wing, rotary, manned or unmanned. Of particular concern has been the development of long-range high-yield glide bombs. Similar to a JDAM, this weapon system is essentially a GPS guidance kit with deployable flight services attached to the standard Fab series of aerial bombs.
Wow.
With variants extending from the smaller Fab 250s all the way up to the Fab 5000, the Unified Guidance and Correction Module, or UMPK as it's known in the Russian Air Force, has provided the VKS with a precision strike capability they've lacked for the majority of the war in Ukraine. And since its development,
can I just say though, those new kits used on those new glide bombs, they look like they were made from things you get at a Home Depot. They look so cheap.
All the other so-called super weapons proclaimed by both sides, its only rival in impact that it's had on the battlefield and the tactical situation is HIMARS. It's that important, as due to its slow speed, basic construction, and the lack of any major thermal signature, it's very difficult to see on sensors, and it's of course relatively cheaper compared to other munitions, so it's not worth really firing missiles at it, even if you see it. And this allows the Russians to destroy key frontline defensive positions with precision strikes, as well as hit targets further into Ukrainian territory than most ground-based systems can reach, such as railheads, ammo dumps, refueling points, and more commonly, casualty clearing stations, because nothing attracts Russian munitions like medical facilities.
Yeah, because
various brigade commanders across the front line have cited these weapons
Russia
as the main reason Ukrainian forces have been losing ground, as Russia finally has the ability to hit them accurately and consistently. And the worst part for Ukraine is, they can fit this system to any of their standard aerial bombs from the Soviet era as far back as the Korean War.
Oh my god.
Meaning as long as they can make guidance kits with electronics and computer parts sourced via China, they have an 80-year reserve of munitions available, which they very likely will never run out of, as these bombs are found standard across not just the Russian military, but China, Iran, and the DPRK as well. Therefore, one of the main objectives stated by the Ukrainians of this offensive has been to eliminate this threat, or at the very least, curtail its effectiveness, by bringing surface-to-surface assets into range against those air bases in the Russian interior housing the aircraft that launched them. To that end, Ukrainian long-range strikes, either by drone or in the case of Crimea by Storm Shadow and ATACMS, have been against airfields, radars, and the SAM network protecting them. And although we haven't seen film of it yet, I would guarantee that the F-16s have been joining forces with Falcon pilots in wild weasel duty since their arrival.
Fuck
the
yeah.
AGM-88 Harm has been flying at a consistent rate over the past few weeks in support of these drone strikes. Multiple S-300 and S-400 systems have been hit and destroyed throughout the theater, while Lipetsk Air Base, a forward airfield for the Su-34 fleet responsible for the majority of glide bomb attacks, had its ammo depot containing all of those bombs and their guidance kits incinerated in a drone strike on August 9th. In fact, at the initiation of the assault on August 6th, the attack was preceded by a drone wave assault against the air defense network in the region, and for the past 6 months, there has been a massive counter-air deep strike campaign on every single Russian airbase within range of Ukrainian long-range weapon systems. We all saw the images from Morozovsk airfield and the ammunition explosion that started a fire, which we could see from space.
Kaboom!
However, the best one, in my opinion, was none of those. It was, in fact, this one.
Oh, yes!
Damage, as you can see, to an Su-57.
I am sorry. To quote, the fucking... the indestructible, immortal Su-50 stealth fighter. Oh, when I saw these images of the Su-50 damaged and hurt, I couldn't help but laugh. To quote, now if only the F-22 would have its day. Would you intercept me? I'd intercept me. Honestly, we just need to let the Raptors go to Ukraine. You know what? Screw Congress at this point. We need to send fucking Raptors to Ukraine. Screw that. The Raptor needs to have its day. We have been starving that poor jet for too long. It needs to have its day. It needs to feed on Russian Su-50s. And while we're at it, let's send some A-10s. I know what we said in Laserpig's video, but I'm pretty certain that I don't think that the A-10s, like, inaccuracy will be a problem with those Ukrainian those Russian convoys. I guarantee you those A-10s would have no issue hitting every single target of a Russian convoy. Oh, 30 millimeter go brrrr. Yes.
Sorry. Unprofessional of me, but I couldn't.
Oh, who cares?
But
be like me. Be an amateur.
Aside, the Kursk offensive has, it appears, achieved that stated objective, or at least mitigated the circumstances. On August 14th, literally a few hours before I wrote these very words, or at least this paragraph, Ukrainian forces hit several air bases throughout the region. Nizhny Novgorod, Voronezh, and even Moscow Oblast were all subjected to attack in what is being officially recorded as the single largest strategic drone attack of the entire war. Damage assessments are still ongoing at the time of publication, but the primary targets seem to be repair facilities and munition storage, given that's where they store and subsequently equip the glide munitions. But in terms of aircraft, an Su-34 has been destroyed among the previous strikes, while footage of at least one MiG-31 being destroyed, with several more damaged, is confirmed.
Nice.
This aircraft is notable as it is the primary launch system for the Kinzhal, so-called hypersonic missile. But this isn't the most impressive thing. Oh no. The footage you are seeing here is a warehouse in the town of Tetkino, a town in Kursk Oblast that is just over the border. But since then, we've also got footage of this bridge across the border and this Russian headquarters across the border. That's right. They are targets being struck by precision munitions launched from Ukrainian fixed-wing aircraft.
Hell yes!
Ukrainian fixed-wing aircraft are operating over Russian soil. And it gets even better because watch this. Here we have a MiG-29 launching one, and here we have an Su-27 coming back from the mission that dropped the warehouse. We have confirmed, no longer rumor, confirmed Ukrainian Air Force assets flying over Russia. They are operating in conjunction with the offensive near the front. And this suggests that the airspace over Kursk Oblast is contested. Russian airspace is contested. And that is a wild sentence I never thought I'd ever get the chance to say. But alas, once again, here we are. The airspace over the salient has been absolute chaos, with losses on both sides. The Ukrainian Air Force has suffered the loss of 2 of its remaining MiG-29s, sadly with the loss of one of the pilots, which is a significant hit to take, it has to be said. But with the arrival of F-16s and the training of new pilots, they can now start replenishing their losses. Meanwhile, Russia's frontal aviation situation is, by comparison, catastrophic.
That's
2
putting it
Ka-52
mildly.
Alligators and an Mi-28 Havoc have been confirmed shot down, the latter with an FPV drone, making it, as far as I'm aware, the first manned aircraft to be destroyed in air-to-air combat by an unmanned combat aerial vehicle ever.
Wow.
Then there is another Su-34, presumably brought down by the Ukrainian Integrated Air Defense Network that is steadily being established in the battle space. Even money is that the MIM-104 Patriot has claimed yet another victory in its ever-continuing battle against Russian pride, who still maintain that the S-400 is better. Oh, and speaking of those, their search radars keep getting cluster-bombed by HIMARS, so there is that. But at least it isn't as embarrassing as this book, for example, getting hit by a drone in the open as multiple Ukrainian ISR assets fly directly above it. Looking at it.
Oof.
It is an air defense system being observed by drones, and they don't have any short-range air defense to cover them. Like, seriously, guys, is there no one there with an Igla, a ZSU-23 on a flatbed, cousin Yuri from Chelyabinsk with a shotgun? I mean, seriously,
Look
is there
up!
nobody? Good lord, it's like 2022 again, only this time you don't have an excuse that the Ukrainians won't resist, seeing as the Ukrainians are now invading Russia. And the worst part is, you would think that this is the worst revelation from Russia's air operations in the region, but oh no. No. The worst is the Ka-52 squadron acting as the QRF, rolling in to turn back the Ukrainian counteroffensive like they did in 2023, only to blast an entire convoy of their own guys.
Oh my
including an
God.
artillery unit with Mr. Self-Propelled Guns.
Oh my
A weapon
God.
system Ukraine doesn't have. It is very clearly a Russian convoy, and this happened well behind the lines, moving towards Sudzha from the lines to the east. They were coming to friendly Russian positions, and then, say it with me, say Russia's national motto with me, it gets worse, because they hit another convoy of their own troops in unarmored trucks, killing a platoon of conscripts, only to then post it on social media as propaganda, proving they are defeating the fascist invaders. Behold, the mighty Russian Ural, a truck, a much deadlier foe than that Leopard 2 combine harvester. Good God. Look, we all know that friendly fire incidents happen even in the best equipped armies in the world. During Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom, we've all heard the stories about the A-10 blasting British convoys. We've seen it happen, we know it happens, and it still happens regularly to NATO forces included these days. But seriously, you are in your most modern attack helicopter at a mile distant with a high-resolution FLIR camera looking at a friendly vehicle. It is very clearly a friendly weapon system. The Ukrainians don't have the Mister, and it's coming from the east, moving west towards the front lines. I mean, seriously. Good God. It's just, again, my friend Chris from History of Everything said it best. This country would be the funniest black comedy in the entire world
Fucking
if
Death
it wasn't
of
for all the
Stalin.
bodies they leave
Yeah,
behind, including their own.
Agreed.
Anyway, moving on to the one...
Bro, I didn't even know that happened. Like, the fucking... I mean, what was going through the fucking pilot's mind of that fucking alligator? Oh, let's see here. That's a missile system. That's our artillery system. Those are our trucks. Those look like our uniforms. They're coming from basically where we came from. Yeah, that's probably Ukrainian, right? Oh my god. What the actual fuck? Jesus Christ. What a mess. I mean, god damn it. The fucking alligators now fucking surpassed the A-10 in blue on blue casualties. Holy fuck. I think me and Laserpig owe the A-10 a fucking apology at this point. Because at least with the A-10, it was literal accidents. There's no excuse here. They were in an attack helicopter, and as he said, not even a mile out. How do you fuck that up? I mean, yeah, how do you fuck that up? That is utterly fucking ridiculous. Oh my god. Fuck me.
The other aspect of the campaign that we haven't discussed, that being the naval aspect of this campaign.
I heard some stories.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, let's hear it.
There is the Pripyat Marsh and the Odd River, but it's kind of hard to carry out naval operations in this terrain. Is what you'd expect me to say. Because not content with blowing up one of the Black Sea Fleet's few operational submarines in dry dock,
Kilo class.
again, Ukrainian naval forces from Command Group South have used the complete insanity of the past few days to screen their own shenanigans, launching a surface drone strike against Russian gas platforms off Crimea, which resulted in some rather impressive fireworks.
Yay!
Also, I should note here that Russian naval activity in theater is down to the lowest level since the war began in 2022. I have to update my chart for the losses. We're getting a bit dire now, they're running out of boats. But practically the entire missile-capable force has been relocated to the eastern shores of the Black Sea, due to it being far too unsafe to operate within range of the Ukrainian shoreline. For reference, the last time that this sort of complete withdrawal from the Black Sea Fleet became necessary was during the retreat from Sevastopol in 1942, after Army Group South crushed the Soviet relief force on the Kursk Peninsula during the incredibly named Operation Busted Hunt. And that may not be the only historical parallel here, as after recent events, we may see yet another instance of successive naval commanders being summarily retired like the last guy. Though NKVD Bullet is probably better than Putin's signature move, which I started titling the defenestration sensation sweeping the nation. Alright, with the Black Sea covered, let's get back to Kursk.
I mean, okay, hold up. Let's talk about the Black Sea for a minute. The fucking Black Sea, the Crimea, this is basically what all of this is, in my opinion. I think that, like, the Black Sea and Sevastopol and Crimea is the primary reason Russia is honestly fighting this war, aside from it being to create another bulwark against the West, same Cold War tactics. But, like all throughout Russian history, the biggest, most crucial reason for ever fighting us, fighting the West, fighting anyone, is to maintain their warm water ports. It's always been whether or not they could control the Black Sea. And it's always been that way. And now they can't even do that. This is insanity at this point. I think it's truly official at this point. If not, all we need to do now is just fucking win the war. But it's basically official at this point. The Russian fleet in the Black Sea is summarily done. At this point, like, let's take a look at some of the casualties. Like, we've already they lost the Moskva, the fucking flagship of the fleet. They've lost a number of submarines and smaller surface vessels. They've lost landing ships, and now, more crucially, they've lost Sevastopol itself. they've basically lost it. The city may not have been taken, but it's still under Russian technical control, but the Black Sea Fleet isn't operating out of it anymore, basically. They've had to pull out. Honestly, this is just fucking pathetic, really. Like, it's just insane. Oh my god. I guarantee you, by the end of this war, Russia will not have a Black Sea Fleet by the end of this war. It will either be completely destroyed, or it will have to be abandoned and decommissioned because they will have no longer any access to the Black Sea. Fuck me, man. Whew.
Since the initial breakthrough, we have seen some truly astonishing things happen. The main one being, for the first time since the Kherson operation, we have seen an exploitation force actually employed, restoring war of maneuver to the battlefield. We've seen footage from what feels like half the brigades in Ukraine operating in the Kursk salient, though the 225th Assault Brigade of the Territorials has been the biggest one. Even so, just about everybody is in on this. And that exploitation force has advanced far further than anyone expected. Most of us, including me and my friends on the NATO Even Rounder table, assumed that this would steadily slow down after a few days. Yet Kyiv has decided to push this all the way to the hilt. Rapid advances have been made on every axis in every direction. But
Go
for
Zelensky.
speed, they've traded security. A column of BTR-4s overextended their advance, resulting in a costly ambush, while both a Challenger 2 and a HIMARS has been lost.
Oh.
Yet in other sectors, the Ukrainians have demonstrated the key to winning battles the NATO way. And for you vets in the audience, I'm about to trigger a subconscious response. Ukraine is practicing speed, aggression, and the violence of action.
Oh, God.
To say that Ukraine is utilizing shock and awe sounds absurd, given that you associate that term with a theater-wide attack in overwhelming force. Yet they have managed a microcosm variation in Kursk Oblast. Even at the time of publication, Ukrainian forces are still advancing towards strategic objectives. We have confirmed reports of fighting approaching the town of Lvov to the far north, still heading towards the Kursk nuclear power plant. This is being done in conjunction with an advance to the west that is attempting to encircle an entire Russian battalion tactical group behind the Seyum River, which they've been using HIMARS and even aerial strikes launched by the Ukrainian Air Force's fixed-wing assets to take out the bridges. We've also seen drone attacks on the bridging units attempting to set up pontoon bridges so the forces trapped there can escape. However, the process is inexorably coming to a close as Russian forces are penned up against the riverbank. Then there is also confirmed reports that the settlement of Koronyevo, which the Russians held a PR campaign to try and prove to everyone was definitely still under their control, is now coming under Ukrainian occupation. We also have reports of the Belarusian Free Legion moving in that area as well. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have units moving on the east-northeast axis, and they are still going at a rapid pace. And they are coming dangerously close to cutting the road and rail links into Belgorod and the Kharkiv region entirely. In fact, there is some evidence to suggest that they've achieved that already. And this has been a stated objective from the armed forces of Ukraine in their press release to divert forces from the now stalled Russian offensive on Kharkiv, with the goal of pushing them away from the city and out of artillery range. But it's actually far more important than that. You see, when discussing Russian logistics before on this channel, I've mentioned the centralization of Soviet road and rail planning due to the size of their country and, quite frankly, their crippling lack of funds due to either corruption or the lack of capital. Their investment figures in infrastructure were absolutely woeful. Turns out, in a Marxist-Leninist state, the only capital available is the book capital itself, and that doesn't count for much. Though it is a good analysis of how the system works as a whole, and it works wonderfully as a doorstop as long as you get the compendium edition, because it's absolutely enormous. The rail and road net in Russia, by design, goes from major settlement to major settlement, like relay hubs, rather than the overlapping grids you see in Europe, the United States, and Asia. The central hub is, of course, Moscow, and the lines of communication radiate out like spokes on a wheel. Kursk, Belgorod, and all the other major cities in the region are interlinked through large, singular main supply routes.
I just have to say this. Just look at this. There's Kursk right there. There's Moscow. The Ukrainians are about here. That's almost halfway Kursk is practically the halfway point to Moscow. That's how fucking close they are. The fact that you could, even just a small, even if it's just a small incursion, just to take some pressure off some of the other, like, occupied regions of Ukraine that are contested in, like, eastern Ukraine. That's still, think how scary that is. They are within, they are closing in to range of Moscow. It's honestly just a little scary at times. Because who knows what'll happen. Like, currently right now they're just launching drones, like small drones. Imagine if they get within HIMAR range. Or a tactical ballistic missile, or a cruise missile range of Moscow. I'm all for Ukraine taking the initiative and taking on Moscow, but it's just, never underestimate your opponents. I certainly don't underestimate Putin and his desperateness. If Putin gets desperate enough, who knows what he might do. I don't know about nukes because, well, of any of the corruption throughout China and their nuclear weapons is any more proof, where they found fucking water instead of fuel in their missiles. I'm not too worried about nukes, but who knows what he might do. Nukes he may not do, but but I think it's a pretty obvious fact that Russia has a few chemical weapons hidden around here and there. It's definitely terrifying to see if a chemical warfare gets started. Like, honestly, I think chemical weapons are actually kind of worse than nukes. I mean, yes, nukes are absolutely destructive and they will take away life in cities in a blink. But chemical weapons, chemical, biological, I think those are the worst. I truly think those are the worst weapons that we've ever developed. Want any proof? Go watch World War I documentaries and see how chemical weapons fucking worked. Gives me chills. I mean, just, that's scary. If they take Kursk, they can imagine that. Imagine they stop at Kursk and then hold the Russians there and then push east, kicking them out of Ukraine. They can move to the Volga and they could cut off the entire southern region. And this whole southern region of Russia is highly contested. You've got Georgia down here. Imagine if Georgia decides to rise up and they actually invade Russia as well. Russia won't be able to get any reinforcements down there. Imagine if Chechnya, despite being so-called pacified with its own dictator, ruler, governor of Russia, who is basically Putin's little bitch, imagine if there starts becoming another uprising down there. Imagine if they take Belarus. Imagine if they also launch another invasion into Belarus. And Belarus falls. I'm pretty certain that if an invasion of Belarus happens, there will be a revolution and they will kick out... What the fuck is that asshole's name? I forget it. He's a worthless little bitch. He's Putin's mini-me. He's Putin's mini-me. But imagine that now. We might be looking at the birth of a few new countries. Belarus can get a new government that's independent and democratic. Georgia could get a lot of its land back. A lot of the smaller republics that have been fighting for independence for years could finally gain some independence. This new invasion, it's something else. It truly is something else.
And therefore, they don't have a lot of redundancy. If such a line was cut, the entire network would start to implode. And developing information coming out of Belarus seems to suggest that this is already starting to happen, with rail freight traffic starting to back up and fill sidings in the rail yards around Smolensk, making the task of reinforcing and reorganizing to contain the Ukrainian offensive much harder than it already is. However, we already have an indication as to how well the situation is going from the Russian perspective. Because despite war bloggers reporting crushing defeats of the invader, as footage of long convoys rolling past is shown on the news, long convoys without any tanks, BMPs, or BTR.
Oh, I know Russia won't grant... I'm not saying Russia's going to grant them independence, but the rate things are going, with the rate, like, they're losing land and they're starting to really lose, like, land, men, equipment, everything. If they start losing more, and a lot of those supply hubs, those rail networks, because the main way of transportation in Russia, like transporting everything from conscripts to equipment to tanks, is the rail lines. And if Ukraine cuts off the rail lines heading into the southern, more contested region of the Caucasians, this could mean the independence of a lot of states down there. I know Chechnya has always wanted some states. Georgia has lost a lot of territory to the Russians. And if Russia loses full connection down there into the deep south, into the deep Caucasian mountain region, they would. I guarantee you, Georgia would probably try to get its land back. They'd probably launch their own campaign against Russia to gain back a lot of the land they lost to Russia. Only time will tell.
Of any kind, which isn't the kind of image I'd want to project, but apparently it's reassuring somehow. OSINT sources have geolocated evidence of defensive fortifications being constructed in Kursk Oblast, outside the city of Kursk itself, along the MSRs I just spoke about.
Jeez.
Now, while I don't think the Ukrainians will push up that far, if that is their designated fallback line for the region, it would involve ceding sovereign Russian territory 30 miles across the border. For reference, Ukraine controls in excess of 600 square miles of Kursk Oblast already. This would effectively double that. Except as this situation develops more and more, with evidence of Ukrainian forward sabotage teams launching ambushes and inflicting casualties on Russian rear echelon units, while slaughtering infantry formations still in their trucks, this may be a prudent course of action.
Yeah.
At time of writing, there are some reports that in excess of 2,000 POWs have been taken. In fact, as I wrote this very paragraph, a force of over 100 Russian conscripts surrendered en masse after being abandoned by their commander.
2,000?
Hell, the advance is going so well. Ukrainian forces are leaving Google and Yelp reviews for the various businesses in Kursk after they have passed.
They're leaving fucking Yelp reviews? Oh, these I gotta read. Okay, from Tony, 4 days ago. I liked everything. Delicious food, good service, small parking lot. Couldn't pack my dick. I'm assuming he meant park. Oh, and he just parks a leopard right in front of it. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm pretty sure that's not his actual tank, because I think they got Leopard 1s, not Leopard 2s. I'm probably, you know what? No, wait, they did get Leopard 2s, I think. Yeah, yeah, I think they did. So yeah, that actually might be them. Then this one. And yeah, it was a 4 stars. Nice! Okay, 2 stars. The staff does not want to serve in Ukrainian, and they do not accept payment in... I'm assuming that's the Ukrainian national currency. Food 4, service 2, atmosphere 3. I don't know. I don't know how to read Cyrillic. Let's see here. 1 star. Do not accept cash rubles. Only. Do not accept cash rubles. Only food 1, service 1, atmosphere 1. Oh, they do have the leopard 2. Nice. But yeah, honestly, how much of an the one thing I have actually seen, like, here's one thing I have actually seen with the Ukrainian invasion of Russia. They've shown like I've been watching videos of like the Russian people living in the region, like worrying, like, oh my god, the Ukrainians are here. What are they gonna do to us? They're gonna brutalize us because that's what we do. That's what our army would do. But no, the Ukrainians are going out and offering like aid packages. They're giving them safe passage to friendly lines. They're actually not abusing these people. They're giving them medical attention to the wounded. They're following the fucking Geneva Convention. Meanwhile, Russia has done countless atrocities, attacked aid stations, murdered civilians, and has basically just been an absolute like asshole. So I'm just like, wow, this is how you run a war. Like, the more I think that these stories are going to get back to the Russian people, and they start seeing, like, wow, the Ukrainians are actually nice people who don't want to, like, abuse us. They actually are, hell, they might start honestly viewing the fucking Ukrainians as liberators. This could be another thing. This could be all Ukraine needs to do is not, they don't need to march into Moscow. They just need to march a little bit into Russia itself and show that they're like, hey, you can live well and live nicely without living under a tyrant. And you don't need to like live under the jackboots and AK-47s of dictators. You can rise up. You can fight back. For all we know, in a few months or maybe in a couple years, depending on how long this drags out, we could see a revolution in Moscow. The Ukrainians might not have to march in. Holy shit.
For their tanks. But the best thing I've seen from the Ukrainians in this operation, at least in terms of comedy, is this clip of Ukrainian troops capturing the headquarters of the 60th Motor Rifle Brigade, keeping one of the greatest memes of our generation well and truly alive. But just because they aren't in Ukraine anymore, it doesn't mean that a sacred time-honored tradition has been forgotten. The tractors have already...
The more I've looked at this, I'm like, these are millennials. These are like the memes I've been seeing these guys doing. Like, they have to be millennials. So, to all the people who think millennials are the laziest generation, here's the thing. We're not lazy because we just don't want to work. No, we just want to be comfortable. But if you take away our comfort, we will fight back. We will fight back and we will make you regret making us get out of our chairs.
Already been deployed, as we can see in this footage here. And the
tractor brigade is on its way!
Has already begun in earnest. Here, captured on camera for all to see, is the moment a group of Ukrainian special forces located an abandoned T-80 BVM,
oh yeah,
one of Russia's more advanced main battle tanks. And they commenced a tactical acquisition of the vehicle. Not to be outdone, however, another reconnaissance unit marked...
Yeah, they're just like, hey, we found a tank! What should we do? Should we destroy it? Nah! Let's take it. Let's take it home with us. It's like, this is our tank now. Let's go out for stuffed tacos later. Oh my god. Oh, do you know how gangster you have to be to walk up to an enemy tank and said, yo, 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 we could destroy this tank, or we could take it for ourselves. Get in, bitches! Let's go to McDonald's!
Of these for recovery, which is now in service with the attacking force,
Fuck
and
yeah.
is also in service as my thumbnail. Yes, that is a T-90M.
Oh,
Golden
shit!
Eagle was spent to acquire it. In fact, the Ukrainians have captured 2.
Oh my
Yet
god.
my personal favorite image from the campaign so far is this. Now, it may not seem much to you at first. It looks like your average FPV first-person shot. Except you see the 3-letter code at the bottom? It reads FLK. FLK for Frontline Kitchen. That's right. My boy Richard Woodruff's drones are part of this.
Oh yeah, I forgot! Laser pig in the they went to Ukraine! Oh! Oh, the fucking pig in Ukraine. I will get to your video soon enough, pig. I will get to your video soon enough. In fact, I might do it. You might be the next video I do this week. Oh my god. Look at Laser Pig in all his glory! The pig!
Operation, and at least one of them was financed by yours truly. And if you want to donate to this worthy cause, I shall put a link below for you to do just that. Also, remember to like and subscribe if you've liked the video.
Coob, I think you mean strategically transport equipment to an alternate yeah, it's strategically transport equipment to an alternate location. Not stealthily. Strategically. Oh my god. Of course, Pig did. Good for him. Good for Pig.
So far. And if you feel so inclined, join my Patreon.
Yeah, I heard that it was a heavy video, so that's why I kind of wanted to do this, because I figured this one might be a little lighter. I didn't want to... I literally just got back from a fun con. I didn't want to bum my mood down a little bit, even though, if I want to do it, I want to do it right. So, I'm going to give I'm going to give Pig's video on Ukraine a couple of days before I react to it.
To pay bills and stuff. Plus, you get to join the Discord. Anyway... The Ukrainian offensive is now over 2 weeks old, and at this time, despite all the odds, the Ukrainian armed forces are still advancing in almost every direction. To the north, Elgov is under attack. To the east, spoiling attacks are constantly being launched into the Belgorod region, while advanced elements are pushing along the border towards the Kharkiv axis. To the west, an entire Russian BTG is being cut off behind a river, as the Ukrainian Air Force pummels the living hell out of any bridge they try to put across it, as well as destroying the Russian garrison in the town of Tetkino on the border. And as all this is going on, the Russian rail net is falling apart, with trains backing up in depots behind the lines. And in response to this incursion, Russia has declared an anti-terrorism operation, redeploying units from all across the front line. There are even reports of a VDV unit from the Donbass front being moved somewhere.
Wait, a VDV region? Like regiment? What? I thought they were all wiped out. Oh no, here we go. Aw shit, here we go again.
While an armoured unit being redirected from Kharkiv got smacked with a HIMARS strike and lost a considerable number of their vehicles. We also have a weird battalion being formed, made up entirely of aerospace forces personnel. They're literally grabbing like missile control room guys, mechanics, and aircraft fuelers, handing them rifles and sending them out to the front. Hell, even Kaliningrad's garrison. The Kaliningrad garrison is being moved due to personnel shortages.
What?
As Ukrainian forces continue the offensive while they're...
You're moving the entire Kaliningrad garrison. Oh, you have fucked up so magnificently, because I'm pretty sure the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Estonians, the Latvians, they are fucking drooling. They are looking at Kaliningrad going, tasty. And they could, at this point, if they are moving the fucking Kaliningrad garrison, I'm pretty sure the Poles and all the other, like Baltic states, they could just walk into Kaliningrad. Like, hell, Tepex as a fucking Polish citizen could walk to Kaliningrad completely unarmed and go, this is now liberated. And it would fucking be liberated right then and there. My God.
Their reinforcing elements have started building fortifications on Russian soil. Ukrainian forces are digging trenches and fortifications on Russian soil. Putin, the Russian High Command, and to an extent, even the Russian public are beginning to panic. So, with that in mind, let's get to the other half of this video. How the living hell did Ukraine pull this off? And why the hell are they doing it?
It's free real estate. The benefits of a bulge. Did I just see it a woo? I just saw fucking a woo as I said that.
Alright guys, before we go ahead, let's start this off with an OPSEC and credibility discussion. Everything I say here is rumor and conjecture based on what OSINT and anonymous sources have revealed.
Yes.
While the strategic and tactical analysis is based on my own academic knowledge and the analysis done by industry professionals across the content creator space and from the academic institutions studying it, namely the ISW and RUSI. For reference, I spent 2 hours reading their academic paper on restoring mobility to the Ukrainian battlefield for this video. It's over 60 pages long. I'll put a link below for you if you want to read it. The point is, this is all publicly available. No classified material is being shared, and when I offer my opinion, refer to either the ISW, the myriad of books I've read over the years, or, for the nerdier among you, Clausewitz's On War. Okay? Okay. Now with that disclaimer out the way, how did the Ukrainians go about doing this? Well, the reason I started off with an OPSEC disclaimer, and the reason I had an ad for NordVPN on here, is because the control of information regarding this operation was incredible. Top-notch. One might even say varsity. It is the single best piece of operational security we've seen in this entire war.
Hell yeah.
Only senior commanders and the fire support echelons had any idea this was coming. Besides the artillery fire plans and movement orders, which undoubtedly would have had to have been prepared in advance, absolutely no one, except the very top of the general staff, knew anything about this. The reaction by everyone in the Allied nations, as the title of the previous chapter suggests, was, they did what? And we got absolutely blindsided. We got out of nowhere. Ukraine somehow managed to conceal 5,000 to 10,000 men, their equipment, and their logistical tail within range of Russia's border in an age of what the ISW calls a transparent battle space, where there are enough drones and satellites whizzing around that literally nothing can hide in the immediate combat zone. But the Ukrainians achieved it. And funnily enough, they achieved it by pulling a trick the Russians themselves should be very familiar with, as it's the same trick they pulled on this very same battlefield 80 years ago during Operation Bagration. And that trick is, Ukraine didn't hide at all. They were out in the open the entire time. Or at least half of them were. The other half were hidden in every barn, garage, orchard, or camouflaged bunker in the western half of the country, while the personnel were entirely dressed in civilian clothes most of the time, their gear stashed in their vehicles or in warehouses ready for quick retrieval. As far as anyone could tell, they were just students or shift workers heading to and from their daily labours. The guys standing in line for McDonald's in Kyiv, who are all of military service age, are just on leave in preparation for the winter stalemate. No secret invasion force here, sir. Absolutely none. But there were heavy forces, perfectly visible. Challenger 2s, HIMARS, entire columns of Humvees, complete with men bustling around and servicing them. Far enough away to be safe from glide bombs or artillery, but close enough to the front for a long-range recon drone or a satellite to see perfectly fine. These heavy-duty units were all in the Sumy region, preparing to defend it. The Ukrainian government had been evacuating everyone from the region while loudly proclaiming that they were afraid, nay terrified, of a Russian incursion from Kursk. So they kept a large number of forces there, ready to defend it, should that occur. Budyanov, the head of Ukrainian intelligence, was literally launching a psyop on every single media channel, saying how scared they were of an attack on Sumy. The Russians are going to come for us at any second. Very much an Operation Double-Cross move. But, on the other hand...
These fuckers bamboozled the Russians! How do you take on somebody with an ego? You inflate it and then you strike the second they turn their backs. Oh my god! This is brilliant! How do we keep information about this away from the Russians? How about we just inflate their ego to the point where they don't suspect anything's coming? Brilliant. Let's do it. Oh my god.
And the forces there were all a day's drive from Kharkiv City, and they could easily act as a reserve for the Kharkiv front should things go south. The Russian offensive there, though stalled, is still ongoing. And with all this Western gear and the air assault guys there, this was, to use a technical term, a very obvious strategic, oh holy shit, this is bad reserve, and it had that written all over it. This had break glass in case of emergency plastered on every wall. The Russians knew all about this. They saw it, and they thought, aha, this is their reserve. It wasn't anywhere near the border, nor did they look like they were going to be making any offensive preparations, and as far as anyone could tell, they were getting ready to push back a Russian attack or to roll back the gains in Kharkiv Oblast to protect the city from artillery, like mentioned before. However, that's not the whole story, because there were other reserves in the wings. I mentioned before that it seems like every brigade in Ukraine is in Kursk right now, and the reason it looks that way is because, in a way, they are. 3 days before the operation commenced, as all of Russia's attention was on the airbase strikes and the Donbass offensive near Chazov Yar, elements from across the entire front line were mounted up and moved to Sumy Oblast without a warning order. The briefings for the operation were held in the trucks en route to the starting phase line. Granted, they were the follow-on exploitation force, so they would have had at least some time to work things out, but that's still an insane achievement in organization as well as command and control. Just like Operation Bagration, every single battlefield indicator, every single move, every single Russian recon asset was manipulated into believing that the front line along Kursk was actually being weakened to strengthen their lines in the east or near Kharkiv. No one moved during the day. No military vehicles or personnel were seen in the open, while every big scary thing Russia is afraid of was pointed at where they expected it to be pointed. So when the offensive came through, they achieved not just tactical surprise, not just operational surprise, they got the grand trifecta. They got strategic surprise.
Oh my God.
Russian border defenses are made up of FSB border guards and conscript units, and the odd Akhmat Chechen brigade. They have no gear. They had absolute confidence that Ukraine would not risk an escalation of this sort. They also assumed, correctly to an extent, that Ukraine's Western handlers would never sanction an operation like this to go ahead. And as Russian mill bloggers, the MOD, fog of war overclaiming and political arse-covering plagues Russia's intelligence picture, they figured that Ukraine simply didn't have the manpower or equipment to launch this operation. And even if they did, the strategic implications of one of their silly little Russian Legion border raids is not worth diverting from the main effort in the Donbass, because again, due to the lack of diplomatic and geopolitical capital available to Kyiv regarding fears of escalation, any operation large enough to actually threaten Russian national security would run the risk of panicking Western backers. And should it fail, which without the clearance to use long-range munitions and the strain on other fronts it would cause is a distinct possibility, it would cost manpower and equipment that Ukraine can't afford, while damaging the case for further aid to the country going forward. As we've seen with...
The Ukrainians have literally done a watch this op down mid, bro move. Like, everyone's like, no, don't peek mid, don't peek mid. You're gonna be like, and you're just like, dude, shut the fuck up. Let me do this. Bang! It's just fucking A. This is a work of fucking majesty at this point.
With Germany and its shenanigans. And that is saying nothing about the psychological aspect. The idea that an enemy would breach Russia's soil, risking nuclear war. The largest loss of territory since Operation Barbarossa. The loss of face. The damage to Russia's international prestige. The ramifications of losing territory to Ukraine after
Russia had
declaring victory after victory. The destabilizing effect to Russian domestic politics. This whole situation was quite literally unthinkable. So when Ukraine launched this attack last week, they were completely unprepared and have been flailing around trying to arrange a response. According to analysis from the ISW, corroborated by intel on the ground, the Russian command and control network in the Kursk counter-terrorism operation, as it's now being called, is completely fragmented. It is, as they say in professional circles, a complete Charlie Foxtrot. No one knows who is actually in charge, and orders to the various units conflict constantly. And with everyone in a different chain of command, pulled from literally everywhere in Russia, manned by conscripts, mechanics, fuelers, all of them with only a month's training and absolutely no experience, they're literally being called in from everywhere, so they're all from different groups, chains of command, even different branches of service. The results have been absolute chaos, with convoy after convoy being ambushed or obliterated with long-range fires, resulting in hundreds of casualties. No coordinated counterattacks or phased withdrawals have been possible, and there is a real danger of a total cascade failure, with mass surrenders starting to happen in ways not seen since the earlier days of the war. Russian mill bloggers have descended into doomerism, paranoid about this being a diversion in force. There was a fake report that a counterattack was being launched on Zaporizhia just today as I record this. They're thinking there is another Ukrainian offensive planned somewhere else on the front. Command reports being delivered to Putin, on the other hand, are said to be downplaying the crisis, while the public is being told only what the state will allow, which is, of course, everything is under control. Do not question the Kremlin. Something they are saying with a straight face, even as complete information blackouts have been put into effect across the area. But naturally, in the age of social media, there isn't a prayer in Vatnik hell of that working, leading to even more confusion and unease overall. Simply put, no one in the Russian leadership has any idea what is going on beyond the physical results of Ukraine's advance, which is a wonderful segue for the other part of this conversation. Regardless of ruinous Russian ramblings, what is Ukraine actually trying to do? Well, I have theories based on what we've seen, and they are theories shared with a number of other people looking at the same data, so let's go through them, starting with the most likely. The first priority of this offensive, above all else, is unquestionably to seize the operational and strategic initiative from the Russians. Since the battles of Bakhmut and Avdiivka, the Russians have had the monopoly on offensive operations across the entire front line, with their two main axes being the Donbass front towards Chasiv Yar and the Kharkiv offensive operation, which saw a considerable concentration of combat power employed to threaten Ukraine's second largest city, with the secondary objective of forcing the Ukrainian army to commit manpower and equipment they can't afford to spend in its defense. Essentially, the Russian High Command is calculating that their relative superiority in war material and population will eventually allow them to either open a gap in the front or force the Ukrainians to withdraw from their current positions to shorten the front line and cede the territory that Russia wants to annex. They really do need to force Ukraine into a war of attrition. This is, of course, a carryover from the standard Soviet combat doctrine during the Cold War, which itself is descended from the deep operation concept pioneered during the Second World War. It's comprised of multiple localized offensives probing for weaknesses, which we've seen throughout this conflict and throughout 2024 especially. Exhaust the enemy by forcing them to react everywhere, thereby preventing them from massing enough combat power in the defense to launch a counterattack. And once there's an opening, you launch several concentric offensive moves in the weakened portion of the front, with the assault forces supplemented by a reserve used to exploit the breakthrough, known in the lexicon as the Operational Maneuver Group. The reason why this hasn't worked is the same reason Ukraine's offensive efforts in 2023 didn't work either. The lethality of the modern battlefield is so high that the amount of combat power required to breach a prepared defense-in-depth position is exponentially higher than in previous conventional conflicts. Factor in the relatively smaller size of modern armies and the parity in their respective capabilities in ISR and weaponry, neither side can mass enough combat power to overwhelm the enemy defenses, and even if they can, the cost of such an operation would be extortionate. Indeed, the assault on Volodar during Russia's winter counterattack, as well as their attempted bridge assault across the Sversky Donets River in 2022, demonstrate this fact conclusively, and as a result of this, we've seen both sides dig in, leading to the development of extended trench systems and bunker complexes on the entirety of the front line, which, by extension, means we've reached the same tactical situation as World War I, except accurate rapid-fire artillery combined with automatic weapons have been supplanted by guided munitions, digital communications, and most decisively, affordable, expendable combat drones, capable of both recon and strike missions. This is a phenomenon the ISW has dubbed the Tactical Reconnaissance Strike Complex, which is an extrapolation of the Soviet Reconnaissance Strike Complex, factoring in the development of drones, electronic warfare, and rapid digital communications. The transparent battle space caused by recon drones being omnipresent removes tactical surprise. This in turn allows for the concentration of support fires to deal with any attacking force before they can break through the defensive perimeter. In fact, the International Legion just released a series of videos today showing this in action. Their attack on a position failed due to the ability of the Russians to direct concentrated and accurate fire support assets. I can only show a small clip here, obviously, for community guidelines reasons, but I highly suggest you go and watch that video. The point is, breaching a defensive perimeter is nearly impossible, and if that perimeter is breached, the delays caused by the layered defenses, minefields, trench systems, and blocking forces allows the defender to bring up reserves in an elastic defense, thereby preventing either a breakthrough or the exploitation of a breakthrough should the enemy achieve one. Thus, when you consider Ukraine's disadvantages numerically in both manpower and equipment, as well as its dependency on foreign aid, which is woefully slow in coming compared to their operational requirements, offensive operations against Russian positions on the front line aren't advisable. The earlier counteroffensives in Kharkiv and Kherson were only possible due to their ability to isolate the battle area behind a natural barrier using long-range fires, and in Kharkiv's case, they had operational surprise, which is why they are currently pursuing a combination of both methods in the western sector of the Kursk salient. Sorry, saying those words in 2024 and the present
it's
context.
Just odd.
Wow. Historian brain is short-circuiting.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's insane.
So, seizing the initiative via attritional or positional warfare is out. They can't afford the costs in manpower and equipment. They can't mass enough support fires to mitigate that cost, and even if they manage to assemble both, they would have to deplete the reserves necessary to exploit a breakthrough if they made one, which they can't. As such, this leaves them only one option: fighting a war of maneuver. Problem: you can't fight a war of maneuver due to all the issues listed above. You can't fight a war of maneuver if there is no maneuvering. Thus, you have to create the conditions for an immediate breakthrough so you can start a war of maneuver. And there is only one way of doing that. Alright everyone, grab your Clausewitz and put on your Pickelhaube, because it's time to make a Schwerpunkt. That's right, boyos. It's time for some Bewegungskrieg. Or Blitzkrieg, if you are a normal person. But I like the technically correct term, because even though it isn't as cool sounding, It is way more fun to say. Okay, so you start developing this operational concept by using ISR and deception assets to achieve strategic surprise while locating and isolating a weak point in the enemy's defenses. And you need to do this prior to commencing an attack. Then you need to start shaping the battlefield on the operational level to give you a tactical advantage. And you can very easily shape the battlefield by neutralizing, say, I don't know, air defense systems and air bases. Maybe a little counter-air suppression by blowing up bombers and attack helicopters on the ground. You could even try and eliminate their naval assets using drones and cruise missiles, forcing them to pull all their most capable air defense systems together in one area around, I don't know, a crucial naval base on a peninsula, or perhaps even next to a bridge, for example. Making the enemy think you're going to try something to counter their offensive operations, or that your shaping strikes are paving the way for a counter-offensive near where you're bombing, like near a power plant in the south. And in case you are wondering, yes, it is now that I cop out and put the most famous Sun Tzu quote on the screen.
Yeah, of course.
See? There it is.
Yeah.
All right, everyone's seen it?
Yep.
Okay. When taking all these deception operations into account, I again want to reference the Soviet campaign against Army Group Center, Operation Bagration. All the intelligence available to the enemy tells them you're going to attack Zaporizhia. All your heavy units, meanwhile, are based in Sumy as a strategic reserve, completely in view of the enemy. All your big, scary Western tanks and Patriot systems are there, and they've been put there after Russia launched a massive offensive in the Kharkiv region next door. So not only does it look like they belong there, the Russians themselves are going to be looking at your attacking force and going, yes, it's going exactly where I expect it to be going. Again, see Operation Bagration, or, more presciently, Operation Overlord, aka D-Day. Look at those stupid allies. They have a whole army group with their best general, that George Patton guy sitting in Dover, just waiting to board ships. I mean, it's so obvious. It's so obvious what their plan is. It's embarrassing. Let's put our best troops in Calais ready to crush them as they come ashore. There's absolutely no way it's a feint or a trick. Any attacks on other axes must be a diversion from this offensive force. Like, there's no other explanation. The Allies could never possibly deceive us. When you factor all that in, it goes a long way to explaining why the Russians were so unprepared for the Kursk offensive, yet it doesn't actually explain what Ukraine's overall objective is. Seizing the initiative allows you to dictate the tempo of the conflict yourself.
Yep.
That's good, but it's not an objective in of itself, which then begs the question, what is? Well, I told you to grab your Clausewitz for a reason, for as he points out, defending only gets you so far, and its sole purpose is to generate conditions favorable for you to then transition to offense, because offense allows you to achieve your strategic objectives.
Yes.
As war is politics by other means. He does, however, point out that defending is easier than attacking, and it's more efficient.
Yes.
As defenders have a distinct advantage in prepared defensive positions, interior lines of supply and reinforcement, better force cohesion overall, which leads to my first theory. Ukraine is pulling the Verdun maneuver. The Russian border was only lightly guarded with conscripts and FSB units because the Russians assumed that Ukraine didn't have the units available for a major offensive operation in the region, and that they had a lack of diplomatic, read geopolitical capital, from their Western backers to risk an escalation of that size. There's a joke running around the armed forces of Ukraine right now that says they've searched the entire Kursk Oblast that they've occupied so far, and they have yet to find a red line. But anyway, that makes it, by definition, the only place the Ukrainians can attack without assaulting a heavily fortified, prepared position full of experienced Russian troops. Because the Russian army is invading Ukraine, meaning, by extension, they are in Ukraine, not Russia. And their positions in Ukraine are set up for a wide front defense in depth, or for deep operation offensives.
So they're basically going, so there's no red line. You haven't really told us where our lines start and where their lines start. So we're just retaking territory. Yeah, there was nothing to tell us where to stop. You didn't tell us exactly what was technically Ukrainian and technically Russian territory. Bro, the fucking Ukrainians on this. Good on them. Good for Ukraine.
So they have minefields, trench systems, and bunkers. So ironically, the one place Russia thinks the Ukrainians won't attack is in fact the only place that they can attack. The only alternative to this plan would be a counterstroke ambush along the lines of the Allied plan for the World War II Battle of Arras, as Churchill said, cutting off the exposed head of the armoured tortoise. Let the enemy break through intentionally, and then counterattack the supply corridor of the exploitation or blitzkrieg force, cutting them off and forcing an encirclement. The ISW also thinks that this is an option for Ukraine when they reach what's called in Clausewitz's On War the culmination point. When the Russians have taken enough ground and worn themselves out, breaking through Ukraine's defenses, and they've run out of steam, the Ukrainians can then counterattack them and inflict huge losses at very little cost to themselves because they're not assaulting a prepared position. But of course, there is the issue that Ukraine is defending its home soil, meaning that such a strategy would involve surrendering their own people to Russian occupation in the hope that they can successfully cut them off or defeat them in detail. And given the tactical reconnaissance strike complex, as we've mentioned before, with drones covering everywhere and electronic warfare jamming everywhere where drones aren't, pulling that kind of move is difficult, nigh on impossible, and if you fail, it's also very costly with potentially fatal consequences for your campaign. And if you want evidence of such an eventuality, may I present to you this film of German tanks sitting on the English Channel coast in France, which I think is a pretty conclusive demonstration. So, taking all that into account, the Ukrainians have launched a lightning shock and awe offensive into Russia, maximizing enemy casualties, taking lots of prisoners, seizing a bunch of territory, and waging a massive PR campaign in the media and on the diplomatic world stage. It boosts the morale of the Ukrainian people, convinces the Western partners that victory is possible, so they should get more backing, but most importantly of all, it slaps the enemy dictator right in his retired KGB face.
Yep.
Putin has made it clear that an invasion of Russia is the ultimate red line. Cross that and we nuke you. He has also told his people that despite setbacks, the special military operation is going to plan and victory is definitely within reach over the next year or so. The West will fold, Ukraine will seek terms, and the new oblasts will be brought into the Federation in a total sweeping victory. Now, he has to openly admit that the enemy has seized sovereign Russian soil. He has to admit that he doesn't have air superiority over his own country. He has to admit that he won't nuke the world just because an enemy attacks Russia directly. And he has to blatantly censor the information coming out of Kursk so his people don't realize A, how bad things are going, and B, that the Ukrainians are actually treating the civilians well. He has to play down the fact that the conscripts he promised wouldn't fight in the special military operation are now getting slaughtered en masse or being held for ransom as POWs, as entire companies of them are surrendering without a fight, humiliating him still further. And even after 2 weeks since the Kursk offensive began, Ukrainian forces are still advancing into Russian territory, and they are still launching cross-border raids into Belgorod and other locations almost at will. Now, part of this is almost certainly an effort to destabilize Putin's regime. If Putin can't respond to this effectively, he will lose domestic support from his oligarchs, as well as suffer damage to his public image at large. However, the issue with this being the major overall objective is that while it will definitely undermine him, there is currently no opposition movement or viable alternative to confront him. The Russian people don't have a public figure to rally around and start a revolution. As Vlad Vexler pointed out in his video on the subject, the Russian people, to an extent, are viewing the situation in Kursk kind of like a natural disaster rather than an invasion. They aren't fired up to repel the invaders, which is most likely unnerving Putin and his backers to a certain extent, but they are so depoliticized that they honestly are indifferent to the overall outcome. In Sudza, we've seen...
I just have to say this, because it's kind of like Putin has always used the "we will nuke you" threat quite often. Let me actually explain something different between why I think there's only two types of people that will ever. There's only two types of. There's only one country in this world that will ever truly use nukes, and that is the United States. Let me explain why. When it comes to nuking. Nukes are weapons of last resort or of true mass destruction. Let me explain. Russia keeps on saying, "Oh, we will nuke you for this, we will nuke you for that," blah blah blah. I remember Putin saying, "Oh, if you invade Russia, we will nuke you." It's been 2 weeks. There's been no bombs dropped, and that's because in the end, what Putin wants is like we've always said, they want a buffer zone against Western democracy, against what he calls Western decadence, which is basically thinking about. Let me explain. Like I said, Atomic. Let me explain myself. Putin wants land, so he can make Russia truly a land that the Soviet Union was, a land of production, a land of farming. You can't farm like irradiated fields, and you cannot like conscript and force people into labor when there's shadows on a wall. So that's why Putin cannot nuke. When it comes to the United States, when it comes to like other countries that have nukes, like UK or even other nations like the UK really doesn't have a need for nukes. I'm sorry, England. I know you're a wonderful ally, and I love having you guys, and I would love to come visit the UK someday. You just really don't need nukes. You're not the world power you once were. Just admit it. You're not the world power you were anymore. Your empire is gone. It would be better for everybody if you would accept it. It would be healthier for you. I'm sorry. I still love you. But when it comes to the United States, there are two types of groups. There's those who use nukes as a last resort, and those who just don't care. The U.S. is the weapon of last resort type of person. Like the only time we have ever dropped nukes in combat is, of course, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the reason why we dropped those two bombs is because Truman looked at the invasion plan for Japan, and his generals told him it's going to take 10 years to pacify the country, and it's going to cost millions of lives, and possibly even wipe out the entire Japanese people. Truman looked at that and was immediately horrified, as any sane man would be. 10 more years of brutal, bloody conflict? Or 2 bombs that would absolutely level strategically important cities. Yes, I know everyone likes to say, oh, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not strategic, vital, important targets. They were just civilians. No, they weren't. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were both important military-industrial cities that were important to the Japanese war effort. Especially Hiroshima, since it was, in fact, an anchorage and headquarters for the Imperial Japanese Navy. The Imperial Navy spent a lot of time in Hiroshima Harbor. And Nagasaki was an important industrial complex city. So those cities were, in fact, strategic military targets. So Truman used it as the last resort. He used it in the terms of saying, I am not sending millions of people to a meat grinder. I am not spending 10 more years fighting in the Pacific. We are ending this war today. The other group are the groups that just don't care. These groups fall under the realm of extremists. She's not a hotel. Leave Yamato alone. Anyway, extremists are the groups that just don't care. This is why, like, throughout the War on Terror, we've always been, like, all the major, like, intelligence-grabbing headquarters, the CIA, the MI6, GSG-9, the French GIGN, all of the major intelligence groups have been making sure that nuclear material, or the material to build bombs, doesn't get into the hands of like extremist groups like terrorists like Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, countries like Iran, because these are countries that are led groups and countries led by men who are not interested in territory, who aren't interested in land, not like Russia is. They are interested in spreading a ideology. I'm not going to say anything in terms of like religion or stuff. We're going to talk about ideology. Which is a whole different ball game. But these are groups that want mass casualties and mass destruction. That's the only other group. Putin, for whatever he is, he's not an extremist. He is not. He is a man who wants to build an empire. He is a man who wants to wear a crown. He cannot have irradiated wastelands and shadows on walls for subjects. Terrorist groups like Al Qaeda and the Taliban and countries like Iran, they don't care about people. They want to cause mass panic. They want people to live in fear. It's a whole different ballgame. So when it comes to the threats of nukes from like Russia or China, it is really, really... It's... Oh, Nagasaki was the naval base? I thought... I remember that Yamato and most of the Pearl Harbor Strike Force was actually also stationed in Hiroshima. Maybe they were both naval bases as well. I also remember, like, Nagasaki had a big manufacturing plant for war materials. Either way, they were both strategic operations. Anyway, so when it comes to nukes, the only people that will ever use it again are either extremists or people who want to get the job done quickly to avoid long-term conflicts. Putin is not one of those people. The only time, honestly, actually, there's a third. There's a third. And this is one that kind of concerns me when it comes to Putin. The third group of people are the desperate. And those are the people who have been backed into a corner. They know they're going to lose. They know it's over. So they're going to launch their nukes to basically deny the enemy anything. There was an order at the end of World War II where Ugly Das Mustachio, yeah, fuck him, I'm not going to say his fucking name, where he ordered that after his death, all of German infrastructure, all of their cities, all of their lands be burned. It was basically, for all you Star Wars nerds out there, it was Operation Cinder. It was literally a scorched earth tactic. He literally said, let the Allies have nothing but ashes. That is where I think Putin is. I think Putin is that third category. He's desperate. He's scared. Hiroshima's not that inland. Look at a map. I think it isn't. I don't know. Maybe I need to re-look at a map. I don't know. Like I said, I'm an amateur historian. Sometimes I forget shit. I will fully admit that. I'll fully admit when I make a mistake. But anyway, yeah. Putin is, by all means, in that third category of desperate, which is why I kind of hope that Ukraine actually holds it. You know what? Now you've got it in my head. Let me see here. Let me look at Hiroshima. Now you guys have got it in my head. Thanks, chat. Let's see here. Hiroshima. No, Hiroshima is not. It's not inland. Yes, it was a naval base and the reason Hiroshima was a naval base is because, like, just south of Hiroshima is the naval building site of Kursk. I know I'm butchering that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to my Japanese fans. I'm sorry I'm butchering the name of your city. But down south is Kursk Naval Yards. That's where they build all the ships. That's where the Yamatos were built. That's where all the major ships. But Kursk was actually a smaller harbor. So most of the Navy would sit in Hiroshima where it had a bigger harbor. So that way they could fit the entire Japanese fleet there. Nowadays it's a little different. Oh, that's right. That's right. Shiano was built in Nagasaki. So yeah, they were both naval anchorages. Anyway, but yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Hiroshima is on the seaside. So yes, it is. Yes, it is. Ha! I was right. Anyway, so that's the whole thing when it comes to me and Ukraine. That's the whole thing. What I think the hope in this operation really is just an area to get, like, pressure off of the areas that are already heavily contested by Russia inside eastern Ukraine, so that way they can start moving to take territory back from the Russians, and then get in a stronger position to dictate terms with the Western allies and Russia when finally Putin is brought to heel. But anyway, let's continue.
Seen the Ukrainians handing out aid to the citizenry And the overall reaction to the Ukrainian occupation is more akin to, well, all hail Zelensky, I guess.
Yeah.
At the same time, the entire population across Russia is indifferent to the situation because, as far as they're concerned, it's irrelevant who is in power because they have absolutely no say in it anyway. In Kursk, the Ukrainians are providing food, water, and electricity, while the battle area is in the next town over, so again, it's not my problem. Which is how the rest of Russia is seeing it. It's not my problem. The only thing that will bring any chance of radicalization is the fact that the conscripts being sent to respond to the rupture in the front line are getting killed or captured at an alarming rate. And as such, it's no longer just volunteers or kontraktniki, prisoners or contractors getting killed. It's their own high school kids. Therein lies another potential objective of the Ukrainian offensive. By attacking Russia itself at scale, they may be trying to trigger a full-scale mobilization of the Russian populace to change the special military operation into a war.
Ooh.
Now, many of you may be thinking that this sounds counterintuitive. Surely this isn't something that Ukraine wants. But the thing is, the last time mobilization was ordered, the citizenry of Moscow and St. Petersburg lost their collective minds. European Russia and urbanized Russia is different from the poor and the migrant communities.
Yes, we forget stuff too. There's what was that line in Kung Fu Panda 3? There's so much wisdom in here I can't find anything. I will never admit that I'm an all-knowing historian. Even I forget details or forget to write stuff down or just plain out just forget shit or don't know shit. But that's the fun thing about history. You're always learning. But I'm enough of a man, and I don't have a swelled ego enough to admit that I'm an all-knowing historian. Even I make mistakes, and I encourage everybody to make sure that when I make a mistake, you call me on it. So that way I can do the proper research and figure shit out. Or if I say something that just sounds off. So yeah, thank you to my fans for basically keeping me on the right straight and narrow. If I say something wrong, by all means, try to correct me. Just don't believe in propaganda. I can tell which one of you are bots. Continuing.
As well as the other ethnic minorities in the eastern half of the country. They don't really matter that much. But European Russia and Western Russia absolutely went nuts. So much so that Putin had to backtrack and say, oh, no. We're only ordering a partial mobilization and only contract soldiers will deploy to combat. If he is forced to mobilize the Russian middle class to fight in his war, that might just change the political
opposition. Hey, Putin, you want to trade territory? I'll give you back Kursk if you give me back all my regions.
Some of the minor political figures
including
in Russian
Crimea.
society who haven't been defenestrated as traitors would certainly see a boost in support and might even be bold enough to take the fight to Putin himself. This would also certainly provoke a response from the West, seeing all those troops mobilizing. And after they've seen that Putin won't use nukes even though he's being invaded, they may just step up their own efforts considerably. And, as an added plus, holding on to a lot of Russian territory with a newly belligerent democratic administration in Washington could make any future peace negotiations far more favorable to Ukraine's overall bargaining position. But while all the above is certainly a factor in the decision to make this move, the amount of territory they've seized, their efforts to isolate defending forces in the western part of the salient behind a river, the choice of taking settlements at key communications hubs near forests and swamps, hell, even the choice of Kursk itself rather than Belgorod, all of it leads, or rather demonstrates to me, one key undeniable conclusion. Having rapidly seized the territory they could grab, the one word that sticks out to me about this region from the Ukrainian perspective is it's defensible.
Oh.
The reason the Ukrainians pushed out so far initially was to get as big a buffer zone as possible and to inflict as much damage as they could while stretching the Russian decision-making process. Indeed, the Ukrainians have been operating inside the Russian decision cycle, or the OODA loop, for this entire campaign so far, with entire Russian companies getting wiped out by ambush teams and corrected artillery fire, as their own helicopters fire on them in a panic, thinking the Ukrainians are double the distance into Russian territory than they actually are, and that's still a fair ways. Fear and confusion are very powerful weapons on the battlefield. But the other key benefit to pushing this far, this fast, is the reinforcing units, which Ukraine has now been observed to be sending into the salient, have prepared positions to occupy. Defensive positions, they are rapidly expanding. So, you have a political target, a target that will humiliate Putin, destabilize his ongoing operations, and violate a red line he swore he would drop nuclear weapons over. And that target is easily defensible from the Ukrainian side of the lines. A target area that you have been planning to attack for over a year. A target area where you can drop HIMARS or artillery on each individual bush because you've mapped the entire thing 6 months in advance, pre-planned your firing positions, and have the ability to use your fixed-wing aircraft for close air support for the very first time since 2022. The calculus is pretty clear. Putin can't afford to let this drag on. Apparently he's announced that all Russian forces must have cleared the Kursk salient by October 1st, yet he's not going to divert any extra resources to do it. Every day the Ukrainians are allowed to stay in Kursk. Every meter of Russian territory they take is another thorn being dug into his side. It is a political target, yes, but he has to retake it. This gives the Ukrainians the battlefield initiative in the short term, and in the long term, it forces Putin to redirect a substantial number of resources into attacking a heavily entrenched position with overlapping kill chains from every single Ukrainian fire support asset. And keep in mind, despite the fact that it's in Russia, this is far closer to Ukraine's interior lines than the Donbass. Lviv and Kyiv are only a few hours away. The lines of supply here are much shorter and far more secure than their positions in the east. They can keep the ammunition, fuel, food, and fresh troops coming as long as they have them to send, which ultimately is the limitation of this strategy. It's high risk, yes, but the fact of the matter is Ukraine doesn't have a choice in this matter, because that's the other half of the calculation we need to consider. And I have to be 100% upfront about this, because despite my personal bias, despite my willingness to overlook an issue or present something in a glass half full kind of way, the facts are this. If Ukraine can't force a change in the initiative, if they don't pursue counteroffensives based in maneuver, if they don't launch counterattacks on culminating positions, if they don't trade space for time in the east to get the Russians out of their prepared positions, the calculus is clear. Ukraine, on the strategic level, will lose. So this is quite literally the only move they can make, and it's a move they had to make, and it's one that I have been expecting them to make for over a year now. Though, to be honest, I expected a little bit of warning. It's actually incredible, the operational security they've achieved.
I think they've been...
This offensive has achieved multiple things. It's boosted morale. It's done immense political damage to Putin. It forces the Russians onto the defense while taking the battlefield initiative away from them. It forces them to draw forces away from other ongoing offensive operations. It pushes the Ukrainian air defense screen further away from critical strategic targets to counter the glide bomb threat, while bringing their own deep strike assets closer to VKS bases and, of course, Moscow itself, allowing for more accurate counter-air sorties and other operations. To use a Clausewitz term again, Ukraine is trying to shift the center of gravity away from the Donbass and into a position where they can meet the enemy on their terms and defeat them via maneuver. They've proven, when given the ability to utilize their superior training and tactics, Ukrainian troops win most of the battles they fight. So in addition to the Kursk offensive, we may see other shaping operations continue. The primary objective being the degradation of the Russian air defense network. They've already pulled every single S-300, S-400 system from their other borders. Japan and Finland both report that their fronts have seen the network steadily dismantled. Inflicting attrition to these assets in order to leverage the superior long-range strike capability the F-16 provides will be crucial. In fact, the United States is already talking about potentially supplying JASSM to the Ukrainians, which will be an incredible capability. Throw in some more deep strikes on Russian bomber bases, and we will steadily see the calculus change. But it doesn't change the fact that Russia is an oligarchic fascist dictatorship with 4 times the population of Ukraine. They have far more men to throw away, and they have absolutely no compunction in doing just that. To borrow a quote from the film The Battle of Britain, the enemy is losing at a rate of 3 or 4 to 1, but he can afford to. Putin still has reserves of Cold War equipment to go through, and though we joke about it, they still have World War II equipment. In fact, I have photographic proof that they are rolling out old-school World War II Bofors guns from their reserves. I've got a photo of one right here. They are pulling out their World War II surplus now. They have T-34s. They have the older BTRs. They have Ziz-3 field guns in storage since 1950, and it doesn't matter how great your weapons are or how motivated your troops are. If Ukraine only has 5 Leopard 2s, 12 T-72s, and a Ferret armoured car, all of which are driven by 17-year-old college kids that they've pulled out in reserve, 3,000 T-34s mixed in with the few T-90s or so that Russia still has left, that will win the war in the end. And despite the hope that Putin will succumb to domestic political pressure or even suffer removal at the hands of his own cronies, either by assassination or by a leadership coup, the reality is there really isn't any opposition to Putin in his own country or in his own cabinet. Putin has, in every single one of his moves throughout his regime, from when he took power to now, even through this war, he has prioritized his own domestic political security.
Yeah,
depoliticizing his populace, handpicking his staff, and having undesirables defenestrated or irradiated. A Ukrainian soldier in Schluge recently gave a tour of the police headquarters, which demonstrates Putin's priorities plainly. Was the town clinic protected? Was the school protected? Did the conscripts guarding the border have combat-ready equipment? No. The most heavily fortified position in Schluge was the police station, and the Roskvardia unit there had the best gear instead of the combat troops. Even during the Wagner coup, the Roskvardia and the domestic security units and the division guarding Moscow were using weapons and vehicles better than even some of the VDV units on the front get. Whatever happens in this war, Putin will always prioritize his own security.
Yep.
Which is why Ukraine has attacked Russia itself. But it's also why the situation kind of bodes ill. Because the simple fact is, he is perfectly willing to spend as many lives as he has to in order to win. If you remove the obvious moral and political implications of the situation, and by no means am I drawing a parallel politically or culturally or historically here, Ukraine finds itself in a similar strategic position to that of the Confederate States of America during the American Civil War.
What?
They are relying on foreign intervention, directly or indirectly, to supplement the war effort and give them the means to achieve victory while providing political pressure on the enemy to force them to negotiate, or preferably, domestic collapse inside Russia. However, they are on the clock, and they know it. Thus, a decisive attack into enemy territory to force the enemy to fight a battle of their choosing, while undermining the political position of the enemy, is what they have to do. This was their only course of action. However, by committing to this move, Ukraine most likely doesn't have the men to launch successive operations elsewhere on the front, or even in the Kursk salient. This is, most likely, the only move they can make, despite the fears of Russian mill bloggers who just recently spread a rumor that Ukraine was launching a counteroffensive towards the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Yet Putin and Gerasimov can't know for sure that the Ukrainians are out of men. So now they have to face the dilemma of whether to garrison the entire Russian border with Ukraine in strength, which they don't have the men to do. If you want to know what their manpower situation is in the Russian ground forces, I mentioned this before. They have formed an entire infantry regiment out of aerospace forces personnel. They're grabbing mechanics, radar operators, and administration staff from the Air Force and throwing them into the Kursk salient like a human wave to contain the situation, with heavy casualties as a result. Their only other option is to abandon their offensive operations and draw units from the Donbas offensive to shore up their defenses. And that doesn't resolve things entirely either. As more foreign volunteers join the Legion, Ukraine is considering opening up a Flying Tigers program for the F-16, while the Ukrainian Rada is discussing expanding mobilization further to replenish their forces in the field. Yes, it will severely impact the Ukrainian economy, but that extra infusion of personnel
Flying
combined
Tigers
with a renewed sense of commitment
Hell
from the Democratic
fucking
White
yeah.
House, who are way more hawkish than the Biden administration. I don't know if you've seen Tim Waltz's activities in support of Ukraine.
You know what? I'm actually interested. What does Tim Waltz have to say? Let's see. On the day of the invasion, he declared on Minnesota stands with the people of Ukraine, condemns Russia for this illegal aggression. For signing. I'm proud to sign a bill to end the state's investments and contracts in Russia and Belarus. Minnesota does not tolerate. Woo! Even more reason I love Tim!
Good lord. If they can get some more men together, if they can get some more weapon systems, and with the backing of the United States freshly motivated, this could open up a bunch of new opportunities for offensive operations in 2025.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, neither side can launch a decisive operation to end the war.
So, right at the moment, the situation is this. Ukraine can't attack, and Russia can't defend. So, it's literally a World War I stalemate. Well, back to the trenches, lads! Fuck me, it's Verdun. Like, fucking Animarchy called it. It's fucking Verdun 2.0. Fuck me, there's a lot of fucking 2.0s. Battle of Kursk 2, Electric Boogaloo. Flying Tigers version 2.0. Fucking Verdun 2. Oh, fuck me.
To sum up, Ukraine has thrown down a gauntlet Putin will have to pick up, and it will cost him dearly to do it. But it won't be a war winner. Due to the conditions at the front and their lack of resources as well as manpower, Ukraine doesn't have another avenue of attack other than continuing its shaping operations against the Russian air defense network and the VKS. They are also steadily developing more effective electronic warfare tactics and making use of behind-the-line sabotage teams. We have no idea how many Ukrainian intelligence units managed to sneak into Russia during the chaos, but you can bet there were quite a few. And we have reports, as I'm recording this, that yet another intercontinental ballistic Cessna has been seen targeting air bases in the Murmansk region.
Murmansk?
For those of you who don't know, Murmansk is the primary naval base of Red Banner Northern Fleet, or it was during the time
my
of the Soviet
god.
Union. It's on the border with Finland. So that's what we're at right now. Meanwhile, Russia is continuing its operations in Donbass,
that was a big thing in my
continue the war of attrition.
in my Enterprise
But the
videos.
personnel requirements of repelling the Kursk offensive, as well as the very heavy losses they've suffered in these operations thus far, will most likely bring these operations down a notch, or, if Putin gives in to panic, perhaps stop entirely, as units are pulled off the line to shore up the border and support the inevitable counteroffensive that they'll launch against Kursk. There is, of course, the other possible scenario, where Putin decides to simply contain the incursion area and double down on his offensives to the east, although given what we've heard from him, that's probably unlikely, even though this may in fact be the better course of action militarily. But that gives way too much time for the Ukrainians to dig in, while undermining his political legitimacy. Not to mention the absolutely crippling damage the Ukrainians can inflict from that position on the Russian lines of communication and their rail network. We've already heard more devastating reports coming out of Belarus and Central Russia regarding rail problems, and we've also got reports that convoys of supplies headed for Rostov-on-Don are now being diverted through Voronezh due to long-range drone attacks and artillery strikes from the Ukrainians based in the Kursk salient. Things are not going well. And of course, with the new airstrikes in Murmansk Oblast, that means all the other strategic targets in Russia's interior are also open to attack, perhaps even posing a direct threat to Moscow's security itself.
Oh, yeah.
In any case, even though Russia has to attack the Kursk salient, if they choose to decide to just simply contain it, eventually the Ukrainians will just leave a holding force there and relocate units to other fronts.
Yep.
In fact, again, as I'm recording this right now, as I recorded this, the Ukrainians are commencing a cross-border raid in Bryansk Oblast, which is the oblast to the west, near the border of Belarus. How that will develop, no one can say. It's only just started at the time I recorded this, which is 4:45 a.m. my time on the 22nd of August, 2024. So we don't know how that's going to develop yet. Anyway, yes, if the Russians choose to just contain these situations, the Ukrainians will just leave a holding force there because they'll be so heavily dug in they won't need to worry about it, and relocate their elite units to other fronts to shore up the line. And if Russia does push their offensive forward, the ISW suggests that the Ukrainians may be attempting to stretch their lines of communication enough so they can launch successive local counterattacks on the Donbas front as their offensive peters out, so they can then destroy the Russian army in place in a coordinated deep operation before they can entrench on their new territorial gains. They're starting to break into the open steppe near Chazov Yar. If they can pin the Russians in the open there with a war of maneuver, that could drastically change the tactical calculus. However, that relies on a number of factors so diverse, whether they have enough men, whether they can get enough equipment, whether enough NATO aid will arrive, whether the Russians will be crazy enough to push their offensive and try for a breakthrough. There are so many variables there, it can't be predicted. In any case, what we do know is that with almost 3,000 POWs, hundreds of Russians dead, and over 1,000 square kilometers of Russia seized in 2 weeks than the Russians have taken in Ukraine during an entire year, we can definitely call this a victory.
Yeah.
Just not a decisive one. The war still has a long time yet to run before it's decided, and our support here in the West is crucially important. Make sure you keep donating to fundraisers. Make sure you keep your politicians aware that Ukraine is a vote-dependent issue for you.
Yep.
With our help, the Ukrainians' courage, and Putin's ever-declining grip on the situation, as well as his power, the victory thought impossible by many in 2022 may just be within reach. In any case, I want to see them keep yeeting Cessnas at air bases. Again, as I'm recording this, we've just confirmed they've destroyed another MiG-31 and 2 IL-76s with one. So, comedy is comedy. I'll take it where I can get it. Slava Ukrainia, everyone.
Slava Ukrainia! Yeah, I like what fucking Censored said. ICBC. Intercontinental Ballistic Cessnas. Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that was friggin' awesome. That was awesome. Display capture, turn that off, and bring my fuzzy butt all the way up here again. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. This was a whole lot of fun. Yeah, well, yes, a lot of us are getting tired of this war. Remember, we're not tired of the Ukrainians. We're tired of the fucking Russians of it. So, hopefully, things will be better for Ukraine in the future. I hope so. Because I want this war over too. I want to make sure Ukraine is free and safe, and I want Putin out of power. That's the one big thing. I want Putin gone. But yeah, just from the looks of it, like, yes, it's a precarious position, but at the time, honestly, I think it's probably a right call. But now, yeah, so make sure, thank you all for watching. This is a whole lot of fun. Make sure that you come and follow me on both Twitter, come join my Discord, join my YouTube membership. All links are down below and on my channel homepage. Plus, yeah, there's, recently, I made a poll so people could ask me questions and stuff like that. Like, I wanted to just start doing, like, Q&A videos. So, I actually, on my Discord, I put up a actual dedicated channel to ask me questions, like just some basic questions. So if you want to ask me questions, come join my Discord. You can chat with more of my fans, occasionally me, and ask me all sorts of questions. When I reach around 8, I'll make a video where I answer them. But yeah, so this is also my first video on YouTube with me as a VTuber. So woohoo! And yeah. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, you know who I am. I know who you are. I will see you all in the next video.